Hey there guys and gals, welcome to another My Two Cents, and today we're going to be taking a look at Dragon's Wake. Dragon's Wake is a real cutesy platformer from Brainbox Software. First thing you're going to notice is that the title screen, there's no sound on the title screen, unless you go into the options menu, which I'll admit is a little weird. The game itself is really short, so I don't want to post too many spoilers, so I'll probably just keep the footage to the very beginning of the game. Now, one thing you're going to notice is right at the bottom, that's your HUD, that's your entire HUD, and that is amazing. In a game like this, you know, everything that you need to know is right at the bottom of the screen. That's it. That's all you need. Now, this game has both keyboard and controller support, but I played with the keyboard and the controls are kind of floaty, which makes sense. You're a baby dragon, you don't really know how to fly correctly. But I would suggest playing it with a controller, if at all possible. The controls may be weird, but the tutorial for this game is pretty much absolutely perfect. It's spot on. It never stops you, it doesn't tell you exactly what to do, it shows you, but it doesn't get in your way. And that, in and of itself, for such a small game to understand that that's what a player needs, is great. This is also one of the only games I've ever played where no matter what I did or what was happening in game, I never felt like I was lost. Because if you'll notice the crystals in the background, they light up and they will always show you a path. And when you go over them, they actually cease to light up, so you know where you've been. And they're in the background, so they never take up all of your attention. But if you're lost, look for the crystals. Even though it's a small game from a small developer, there's so much polish in this game that you don't expect going into it. Like little tiny environmental interactions, like you wouldn't expect them to have, like, oh, you could kick a goblet around that was in the background, or things you can, like when you run into wooden objects, you can burn them. And those are things I don't expect to see in such a small game, but the fact that they included them really shows, you know, that there was a lot of love going into this game. Now, there's no spoken or written dialogue in the game, unless you count the one gibberish line that people yell at you to get your attention to move on to the next screen. But there are these beautiful hand-drawn stills that occur on all the loading screens. And one of my gripes with the game is that when you get to a loading screen, like this one, the game doesn't advance. You have to advance it manually, which I think is a little silly. I get that they want you to see the story, but if you're playing it, you should really understand what's going on, because basically all the stills do is tell you what happened in the room you were just in. So I think it would have been better if there was like a set time they were displayed, as opposed to you just sitting there to advance manually. I don't understand that kind of design choice, but to each their own. I bet you certainly weren't expecting a game like this to have boss battles, but it does. And a lot of people have been complaining that the boss battles are, you know, like the final boss battle is too hard, but he has a pattern. Like any kind of retro old school game, the boss has a pattern. Once you know the pattern, the boss is nothing. I mean, there's an achievement later on where you have to fight him with only the use of some of your abilities, and I could see him being difficult then, but you know, him by itself, he's not really that difficult of an opponent to fight once you learn the pattern. And I think pattern recognition, especially in games, is something that a lot of, I guess, newer generation gamers don't get. They're used to, you know, the game holding their hand and telling them exactly what to do. But like if you've played Mega Man or anything like that, you'll understand that there's always a pattern that you have to deal with. It's not really a spoiler if I tell you that one of the abilities you get is to breathe fire, because, let's face it, you are a dragon. And like, this taught you how to eat, and from now on you can eat or bite. When you learn fire, it teaches you how to breathe fire. But unlike the bite command, there's sub-commands within breathing fire. So you can actually aim it, but you can also spit a fireball, which you don't learn until the tutorial doesn't explain to you until much later that you can spit a fireball. But the fireball is actually super useful. And that's the only power that you get that isn't like fully explained to you right when you get it. Remember before how I said there's like lots of little bits of polish in the game? Like the fire especially, like it actually lights up the environment a little bit when you use it, and it's not instant when you're breathing fire. Like you have to suck in air to use it for a bit. And I think that like that in itself, like that level of polish is amazing for a game like this. Remember when I said there were lots of little bits of interaction that I wouldn't expect? Like there's something you can do in town here that I didn't realize you could do until way later on in the game. See, when bad things happen in this game, when you play through the first time, you kind of feel like the game is like making you suffer, like it makes you watch these bad things happen. But what's really going on is the developers are trying to get you to jump in and try and fix these bad things, but you don't really get that. So one thing I didn't know until I finally beat the game was that there are actually multiple endings to the game. There's paths that you can take depending on your actions, and I don't think they're shown to you or explained to you that way until you finish the game and you're like, oh, I messed up. Of course it was making me suffer. I'm a bad person. And speaking of making you feel bad, one thing I really liked that made sense to me was that when you're really low on life, your dragon starts to get bloody and beat up. And I mean, I know that the HUD is small and it's not cluttered and it's great, but sometimes when you're in the thick of it and you're like, oh no, I'm hurt. Like, to see that your sprite is all bloody, that really helps. I don't want to spoil too much story-wise about the game, but I will say there are no humans in this game. There are other races, though. Like, there's the lizard people, and you'll meet 2 other races, I'd say. And during the segments in which you fight the 3rd race, like, a lot of people complained that the boss battle was difficult, but honestly, the only time I really died in the whole game was there's one room when you're dealing with the 3rd race that you run into, and I died in that same room like 5-10 times, and I was like, why? Like, it wasn't a breeze, but I didn't have any difficulty until I got to that exact spot in the game. And I think, like, that area in particular is kind of weird because you get a new ability. The last ability that you get is a stomp, and it's supposed to be you jump and then you hold the bite command and you slam down on the floor, but the command for it doesn't always work for some reason. Like, that's my major gripe with the game. The last ability you get, you need it for later on in the story, but the stomp command does not always work. And I don't know if it's me, like, not entering it correctly, or why. I thought at first it was you need a certain amount of height, but you don't, because sometimes I can stomp right away. But that stomp ability, something needs to be done about it. Or maybe I just need to be a better player, I don't know. The only other real gripe I could see someone having with this game is the length of it. I stopped to take notes, and I died like 5-10 times in the same area, and I ended up beating the game in just over an hour. So the game is really short, but it's also cheap. It's at $3.99 if you believe in the price equals length formula. Then I think this game is worth your time, simply because, you know, there's multiple endings. There's multiple things that you can do. You have to play, especially if you want to get all the achievements, you have to play the game more than once. And at an hour, it's not like you're slogging through the game. Like, you go in, you beat it in like one sitting, you're done. And then you can come back later and do it again. So I think at $3.99 for the length of the game, that's doable. A few things I want to get out before closing. One of them definitely is I want to thank Brainbox and T-Mailer for giving me a copy of the game so that I could make this video for you guys. Also, because I have an entire Let's Play filmed, if you guys want me to put that up, let me know in the comments, and I'll be uploading that as well. And I gotta say, to quote one of the achievements for the game, you are crunchy and taste good with ketchup. This game was pretty good. It was a lot different than I expected it to be. Like, I wasn't when I saw Dragon's Wake and like the cutesy art of the first loading screen, I was like, oh, this is gonna be an adorable game. This game is not adorable. This game is not adorable. And I mean, it is adorable in that way, but like the themes that are dealt with in this game are not adorable. Like death and revenge and bringing new life into the world and what have you. That kind of dealy. Very adult content manner for, a game about an adorable little baby dragon growing up and breathing fire and eating salamanders and stuff. But I will say, this is definitely worth your time if you're into platformers. If you're into dragons, of course. And if you're just into something that you can jump into, finish in one sitting, and, you know, come back later if you want to challenge yourself.